This is Professor Derf Seitz. This Java tutorial focuses on two-dimensional arrays. Two-dimensional arrays in Java are arrays of row arrays, where each row is a one-dimensional array. There may be a different number of columns in each row, and the array elements can be primitive data values or object references. This simple program to illustrate two-dimensional arrays here has a single class called bookshelf. The bookshelf is a good analogy to a two-dimensional array. This bookshelf will have 4 shelves, and each shelf can have a different number of books on it. So the top shelf will have certain books. The next shelf down from the top could have fewer or more books. And we'll represent this bookshelf, which is 4 shelves or 4 rows, and each book, starting from the left, represents a column, the first book, second book, with an array, a two-dimensional array, rows and columns. In Java, arrays are indexed starting with 0. So the first row is row 0, the first column is column 0, and our very top shelf will be row 0, and the next shelf down will be row 1. The first book in each row, that's column 0, the second book, column 1. So a bookshelf. If we look at the code, here we have a combined declaration of the two-dimensional array and also an initialization of it using an initialization list. Notice that when you declare a two-dimensional array, you use 2 sets of square brackets to indicate the 2 dimensions here. The data type is int, so primitive integers will be stored in this array. It's initialized here. There's the top shelf. Each entry is going to represent the height of the book in that position. So the top shelf we see here has 6 books with 6 inches, 6 inches, and the last 2 are 5 inches. And we see all 4 shelves here represented by this two-dimensional array. Then what we want to do is write the code here, as you can see, to display, to output what this bookshelf looks like. First we print a simple text message. It says bookshelf top to bottom, so we'll be showing the top shelf, row 0 first, and then on a separate line, because we're going to have a print line statement in a nested for loop here to print out the 4 shelves. Notice that we have the outer for loop right here and an inner for loop. The outer for loop, the index I, goes from 0 and it keeps increasing, and it's going to go all the way up to the bookshelf.length. Now there's the array name, bookshelf, and the length property or field of an array, of a two-dimensional array in particular here, will tell us the number of rows. So I represents the row index, and it will start at 0 and then 1, because the number of rows, the number of shelves, is going to be 4. And to be less than 4, we'll be going from 0, 1, 2, and 3. So the outer for loop will go 4 times, once for each shelf. For each shelf, we have an inner for loop right here. Its index is j, and it increments it each time. And notice that on a given row, remember the I is the row, we're looking at the bookshelf index I, that's the row, and the row has a property called length, which is the number of columns in that row. So each row, this inner loop will go through the columns of that row, which is each book. And for each book, it will print out the value of that book. There we have the row index, column index, and then a space to separate the entries so they're readable. Let's run this program. And we see down here in the output, it says bookshelf, top to bottom. There's the top shelf, second shelf, third and fourth shelf, and notice that they do match exactly how we set up this two-dimensional array. So this is a good overview of the concept of a two-dimensional array of rows and columns where each row can have a different number of columns.